We train them well. Blackberries and Farmer. Now, my story takes place in County Down of Ireland, up there in the northeast section up there. Now, I know you may be thinking that County Down is covered entirely in mountains, but it's not. It's a very fertile country, lots of mountains, and in between there are farms and plenty of lakes and rivers. One of the largest lakes of the world is right there in County Down, and that is where our story takes place. It starts with our farmer, the farmer who had been widowed very young, and he had a young daughter, a very small daughter, and he raised her the best that he could, and also raised his farm and tried to keep her fed and clothed. Well, one day while this farmer was down by the river, as he stood there, he saw a person coming across in a small boat, just poling the way along, moving along, coming closer and closer to the edge. And as this figure got closer, he discovered that it was a beautiful woman. A beautiful woman with beautiful dark eyes and long black hair down to her waist. Oh, she was lovely. And as things happened, they began a conversation, and he and she discussing, and it was one of those conversations you knew would go much further someday. Her name was Claire, and he said, come to my home and meet my daughter. She said, now is not the time. I will see you on another day. Come tomorrow. And she took her boat and went back into the center of the river. Perhaps there was a small island, something out there where she lived. Where else could it be? And of course, he was sure that the next day, he was right there. And there she came again, poling her way across in her boat, and their conversations continued back and forth until one day she consented, yes, I will come to your home. And so she did. And when they got there, the farmer wanted to introduce his daughter to Claire, and he said, daughter, please, I want you to meet my friend Claire from the river. And as Claire reached out to touch the child recoiled back away from her, and in terror screamed and ran out the door. Well, the farmer turned to run after her, but Claire simply put her hand upon his shoulder and said, no, in time she will come to like me. It will simply take time. Well, Claire spent much time at the farmer's home and sometimes would bring him gifts, an engraved handkerchief here, a bundle of kindling here, a jar of blackberry preserves there, bringing all of these things to share back and forth. And those times when the farmer required that his daughter stay in the room, she simply sat in the corner and looked the other way, did not want anything to do with Claire. After some time, the daughter woke up one morning and she said, Father, I cannot breathe. I cannot breathe, Father. I'm having nightmares, Father. He said, daughter, calm, tell me of the nightmares. What is wrong? And she says, at night I dream of a large black cat who comes and sits upon my chest. And as I breathe, it sucks the breath out of me. I cannot breathe, Father. And he took that daughter down to the healing woman and said, I do not know what to do. And the healing woman took the feathers of birds and some spider web and put them into a jar made of blue glass and a cork stopper and gave that to the farmer and said, hang this over her bed tonight and she will be cured. And that is what they did. They hung that little jar over her bed, and the next morning the daughter could breathe. The nightmares have stopped, Father. I did not dream of the cat last night, and I can breathe. Well, the farmer was relieved until he went outside, and there outside in his chicken coop, it had been attacked. The wood had been torn apart. Chickens lay dead everywhere. Some animal had ripped out the throats of those chickens. They lay dead everywhere. The farmer knew that something must somehow connect, and so he made a plan. He sent the daughter to stay with a neighbor that night and said, I will be back for her in the morning. And then he took all the chickens into the barn at night. He got the sharpest knife he could find, and he went and he hid behind the grain in the barn. And as darkness fell, he waited. And after some time, a mighty crash came through one of the windows, glass flying everywhere, and there in the center of his barn was the largest black cat ever seen. Not just like a small house cat, but something we would consider like a panther, a huge black cat with boiling eyes. And this cat began to go after the chickens and began to shred the chickens. But the farmer leaped out from behind the grain with the knife that he had, and he began to hack and slash and stab at the cat. There a fight ensued, both of them covered in blood. The farmer finally cut off the right paw of the cat, and the cat screamed, and the cat flew from the door, ran through the door, leaving blood behind. The farmer, not content to leave it at that, ran after the cat and disappeared into the night. The next morning, the farmer did not return to get his daughter from the neighbor. The neighbor grew concerned. He grew concerned of this strange occurrence, and so he left the daughter at home with his wife and gathered some friends. And they went to the farmer's farm, and there they went into the barn, and they could see that a tremendous fight had ensued in the barn. Blood everywhere. Paw of the cat laying on the ground, chickens dead. And they followed that bloody path out of the barn, and they followed it all the way to the edge of the river, the very spot where he had met Claire. And both the footprints and the blood stopped there. They knew something was strange here, and so one of them went and grabbed the boat, and they all got into the boat, and they made their way out to this island that must magically exist there somewhere. And they made their way out, and as they got to the edge of the island, the blood path picked up, the footprints picked up, and they followed it until they came to a small cottage. And there, in front of the cottage, was the farmer, knife in hand, covered in blood, his throat ripped out. And laying next to him was the body of Claire, her body covered in knife wounds, covered in blood, laying there dead, and missing her right hand.